Greetings and salutations, one and all. Welcome. I'm back. Yes, welcome to the night shift to DJ Kevin Steele. It's a Monday night. Tonight we do a thing we call community and finance. I want to say thanks to each and everybody locked in right now. Those on One Harmony Radio, top of the morning to you over there in the UK. Big up musical genius, Queen Genius. Those locked in on WGLRO, the Donny Walker Morning Show, taking it from the sheets to the streets on the People Station. Connecting you anywhere from the people in Detroit to the people in Denmark, and definitely everywhere in between. Big ups to those on PEMGTV.com. Those locked in on TuneIn Radio, the night shift to DJ Kevin Steele. And right here at the home of the night shift, kevinsteele.com. Encouraging you to call someone, tell someone. Boy, he must be a madman. Definitely want you to call me. 773-789-STEW is the number that gets you in touch. You can call, you can text. If you're overseas, you can Skype. Kevin.Stew gets you in touch on Skype. When they see these signs at this parent sign, it's Christmas, Merry Christmas, it's Christmas. Yeah, it's that time of year. Merry Christmas. Yeah, can you believe it? 9 days away. The sound of Baron. The track is called It's Christmas. We decided to go by. When we reach in front of the gate, we know it was a mistake. The man when came out causing him she 90. He wiped for real we feeling bad. Oh yo yo yeah yeah yeah. He had to entertain me in the yard. Oh yo yo yeah yeah yeah. The man in a shame is he tell me come. Oh yo yo yeah yeah yeah. He bring out two cokes and a lip of rum. Oh yo yo yeah yeah yeah. It's Christmas, Merry Christmas. It's Christmas, Merry Christmas. The parranda start on Christmas Day. Oh yo yo yeah yeah yeah. And we don't stop. Tonight we're getting an update. Oh yeah yeah yeah. So bring out the song, bring out. On what's been going on in the Rodney Reed case out of Texas. And we get to get brought up to speed with some things with the Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case. Yeah, these are some things that are really affecting our community at this particular point in time. If you don't know, you need to ask somebody. I want to say thanks to Policy Media Group for sponsoring this segment of the show. When being in the moment is priceless. What can they do for you? They can give you services, provide for you services like what you see right here on kevinstew.com. They can host your website. They can give you streaming services. They can create the website for you. If you have all that and you just want, or you don't need all that, and you just want to capture a moment and stream a moment securely and effectively, Just give him a call, 754-999-6020. Tell them DJ Kevin Stew sent you. You can also visit them on pulseemg.com. The sound of Baron. It's called It's Christmas. Now, someone who at this point is no longer a stranger to this show, someone who I believe is very instrumental in the Reed family being able to talk about Rodney Reed in the present tense and not in the past tense. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our friend of the night shift and secret weapon to my legal team. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Butt-inski himself, David Fisher. David, welcome back to the show, bro. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well, Kevin. I appreciate that introduction, though. I don't know how secret, that would be.
Don't worry. It's just between you and I that nobody else really knows that you're my secret weapon.
Yeah, we'll just keep that between us.
Yeah.
So, tonight we had discussed a little earlier, we'd kind of look at what the developments are in the Reed case.
Yes.
And, from our conversation back on November 25th. But, and Kevin, can I just say, I'm just getting a little feedback, kind of a delayed feedback.
Are you?
Yeah, just a little bit.
That's interesting.
Okay. Okay. It's just a little bit. I can ignore it. But when we talked last time, we talked about Rodney having a new judge assigned to his case. And we talked about Rodney's Innocence Project attorney, Bryce Benjett, filing a rather bizarre thing with the Texas Criminal Supreme Court.
Right.
What he filed was a suggestion for a rehearing. Well, this last week, the Criminal Supreme Court slapped that down with just one word: denied. Nothing else. No order, no nothing. Because it was a nonsensical plea in that it was not a motion. And the only way you address the courts are through motions.
So you said he filed a suggestion?
Yes, he filed a suggestion with our criminal Texas Supreme Court to suggest that they go back and relook at their findings when they said that the former retired judge, if he would so chose, could stay on the case.
If he chose.
If he chose. Now, granted, the Texas Criminal Supreme Court had no authority to do that, because the chief judge of the Civil Supreme Court had already removed that retired judge from serving on any other case in Texas for the rest of his life. So he was just stricken. And only the civil chief judge of the Supreme Court can appoint judges to preside over cases. The criminal Supreme Court cannot. But that should have been filed in form of a motion to reconsider. And they should then explain that the chief judge of the Civil Supreme Court had already removed the retired judge from serving as a judge in Texas anymore.
So they didn't know that?
I'm sorry. Well, it's so hard to know whether they knew it or this was deliberately done, because we're going to show you how bad and how much Rodney's in harm's way with the Innocence Project attorneys.
Okay.
We we had a guy who was executed on August 21st of this year.
Mm-hmm.
Death row defendant. Bryce Benjett was his attorney.
Okay.
Did not file anything to preempt it. Filed a motion on the day right at the last 24 hours, which rarely ever accomplish anything because it's seen as just a last-minute, Hail Mary attempt.
Right.
But that's not the disturbing part. When I looked at this new judge that they appointed, his name's J.D. Langley. When I looked at him for being assigned to the Reed's case, now I've already been dealing with J.D. Langley for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked back, I found that J.D. Langley was the judge who signed the execution order for Larry Swearingen, the guy who was executed on the 21st of August. The problem is this Judge J.D. Langley has not filed an oath of office since he left elective office on December 31st, 2014. When retired judges are appointed to preside over cases, they must file the Texas two oaths, before they can take the bench. If they do not, they are not judges. They're no different than a drunk walking in off the street and signing an order. And Bryce knows this. I went through this with Bryce in 2015 when Rodney was almost executed the first time.
Right.
Because his former judge, Doug Shaver, had not executed an oath of office since the year 2000.
Okay.
And Bryce would not take any action, so I filed a complaint on the judge the Friday before the week that he would be executed. And they halted the execution the following Monday. Now, in this J.D. Langley, no oaths. He illegally signed the execution order that caused a man to be illegally executed in Texas. And Bryce did nothing. And then we come fast forward to November 20th of this year, right, when Rodney was set to be executed. And what was Bryce filing? Nothing. It just so, now I was watching this judge because I knew he would try to pull a fast one because he knows I would file on him again.
Right.
And stop the execution. So I was watching him. I expected him to pull something. I just didn't know what he was going to pull. Well, after he signed the execution order, a couple of weeks later, he quietly served notice on the judges that he was resigning and retiring. But I was watching him and I caught it, and then let it out. You see, if I had not have caught him,
yes,
and I filed my complaint that he was a judge illegally serving on the bench, our Commission on Judicial Conduct would have simply swatted it aside because the guy's retired. He's not a judge. They have no authority over him.
Right.
And Rodney would have been executed.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, this was. Oh, yeah. No, this was all set up to execute Rodney. I mean, it was a clever maneuver. It just didn't work because I was watching him.
Wow.
And this J.D. Langley is not only no better, he's worse. He's already killed somebody.
Right.
And deliberately, without conscience, without authority, and he's just chomping at the bit to do it again. But I suspect he's going to find out that he went one step too far.
That one step too far would be what?
Well, that execution.
The August execution.
The execution of Larry Swearingen. I think that was just one step too far. I think he's going to find himself, before the end of next year, facing a murder charge, either in state or federal court.
So the Larry Schweringer's family is going ahead with
No,
taking
they
legal
know
action?
they know nothing about this. This is the first time that I've said this publicly.
Oh,
There's been no news. There's been no reporting. There's been no nothing. She only discovered this 2 weeks ago.
oh,
Within the
wow.
last 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Oh yes. So no, this is new. But as soon as the
Right.
national media finds out about it, there will be all types of investigations started. Because now you're seeing a window into the Texas judicial system that, unfortunately, I've had the opportunity to look at over the last couple of years, and it is ugly beyond belief.
Mm.
When we talk about the legal systems in China or Russia or Venezuela or, any third world country,
Yes.
Texas can stand toe-to-toe with them on corruption and abuse of rights of defendants. Because this is systemic within the whole Texas system, and I never would have believed this a couple of years ago.
So had you not done and have been doing your own research, then nobody would know.
No, because you have to look at it this way. How is it that a judge, a retired judge, gets on the bench and nobody checks his oath? How is it that somebody gets executed and nobody checks a retired judge's oath? How can it be that for 20 years the retired judges have not been taking their oath, and yet not one time has anybody stood forward and said, whoa, that's illegal. You must file the oaths.
And in
Nobody.
now in this particular case you don't have one judge not filing an oath, but two judges.
No, we've got all retired judges that are active in the state for the last 20 years. None of them have filed the oath or will file the oath. And new judges that are just retiring that fill the paperwork out to be a retired judge to fill in when needed, they're refusing to take the oaths.
Can they do that?
No.
So
no.
why are they doing it then? If it's illegal for them to do that, why are they doing it?
Because they can. It's as simple as that. Even though our Supreme Courts will rule that judges who do not file their oaths are not judges, thus they're impersonators, and they have been ruling this for 100 years, and yet they will sit back, and let these judges illegally on the bench saying, well, it's the responsibility of the defense attorney to raise this issue. But wait a minute, it's the defense attorneys who are being appointed by the judges.
By these judges.
Yeah, so
So it doesn't make if they raise the issue, then they have nobody appointing them.
In some cases, they're right. Well, sometimes an elected judge will appoint the attorney, and then will recuse themselves and step down.
Okay.
But the court-appointed attorneys stay in business by the judges appointing them. And I've had more than well, let's just say about every court-appointed attorney I've ever dealt with,
Yes.
has told me if they push the judge, they'll get blackballed and they will not ever get a court-appointed case again in this state anywhere. I mean, this is like the mafia. If you challenge one don, all the dons blackball you.
Right.
There can be no challenges to their absolute ultimate authority.
But now here comes David Fisher once again butting in,
Yeah.
justifying the
Yeah, this budding could have some consequences. I gotta, this one could have some consequences
yeah.
to it. But yeah, here I come, sticking my nose and going, hey, wait a minute. If nobody's going to stand up and call them on it, well, under being a Catholic, I got to. But man, it's even for me, it's still so hard to believe that our system has devolved into this cesspool of such incredible corruption. Judges seem to think that they are kind of an imperial force now, like the kings and queens of England. Yeah, criticize them and see what happened to you about 300 years, 400 years ago.
Right.
They had no vocal opposition because the gallows were built for that. They had freedom of speech and freedom to die.
David, I seem to have lost you somewhere along the line. Are you hearing me? I'm not hearing you. One second.
Okay, I'm Sean.
This is weird. Okay, let me do something here. Hold on for me. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in tune to the Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew, and we're talking with David Fisher, aka Mr. Butt-inski, and affectionately known. I think I just lost him. Let me just try to get him back on the line real quick. I think I just lost him. Oh, and I think he's trying to call me back. Yeah, talking with David Fisher, aka Mr. Butt-inski, and we're talking about we're being updated on the Rodney Reed case and some of the things that we're not privy to as it relates to this whole case, and some brand new information also.
Hey, Kevin.
Okay, David, welcome back. I don't know what happened.
I told you there'd be consequences.
Yeah.
I just didn't expect so fast.
Oh boy. So okay, now that I have you back, let's see what tricks happen. No.
The gremlins have for tonight. Yes.
Yes.
All right. So anyway, where are we right now in Rodney's case?
Yeah.
Well, right now there are two motions basically for the same reason, and that is to remove J.D. Langley, the retired judge who doesn't have an oath, and turn the case over to the elected judge of the 21st State District Court in Bastrop County, where the case should be and should have been since 2016, and actually should have never left.
And it left because...
Well, the Rodney was tried and convicted in the 21st District Court back in '98.
Okay.
And then when that judge retired, his daughter ran for a judgeship, and she took the case. And she presided over it from '98 until 2014, when she recused herself. And then they appointed this retired judge who hadn't executed an oath since 2000, and he tried to have Rodney executed twice. Now, this judge has never ruled in the defendant's favor forever. In fact, he has in the early 90s, he had a case in Houston where he was an elected senior judge or chief judge. Black defendant. So this judge court appoints the attorney to represent the poor black defendant.
Right.
He appoints an attorney that is older than dirt. I think he was in his late 70s or early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But he was prone to fall asleep in the trials. So the judge appointed a younger co-counsel attorney who had never done a felony case. And his job was just to kick the chair of the old attorney to try to keep him awake during the trial. Well, it didn't work.
What do you mean
The
it
old
didn't
attorney
work?
slept through the... I'm sorry?
Wait, what?
Yep.
He didn't.
Yeah, that's what I said. The young attorney's sole job was to kick the chair whenever the old attorney started dozing off and snoring.
Right.
In
And
the
that
middle of the
didn't
trial.
work?
No, it did not work. If there was one thing that this older attorney was dead set on, he was going to get a good day's sleep.
While at
And
work.
so
And get paid for it.
Yes, and get paid for it. And he did. He slept through the guilt-innocent phase. He slept through the punishment phase. I think he was awake when they pronounced the death sentence. But that was it. So after the defendant is sentenced to death, the media confront the judge and say, Your Honor, doesn't it, bother you that the defense attorney slept through the whole trial? You know what the judge said? Look, the Texas Constitution guarantees you a right to counsel. The Constitution doesn't say that your counsel has to be awake.
Okay. Mm.
And that's been his attitude. If you're a defendant before his court, in his eyes, you're guilty, and he doesn't care. And nothing changed. After he left elected office, he just continued on and on and on about it.
Wow.
And and looking backwards at this judge, I find an article and a picture of him while he's in law school, and asked to comment on the Kennedy assassination. And he just, this guy, his whole life has just been, in the cesspool of the legal system. Now, the new judge, J.D. Langley,
Yes.
go back and look at him, and he just can't help himself. He has to teach at the universities. He has to, go give lectures at the Texas A&M University and discuss the Constitution and the basic foundations of law of Texas, and talk about how many oaths that he has administered to new U.S. citizens, and yet he can't take his own oath of office.
Mm-mm.
And yet he can lecture on the legal system and the Constitution and the foundation of the Texas courts. And it's just astounding.
That makes no sense.
Well, actually, sadly, it does. Here in Texas, what I've seen, yeah, it does. I see it everywhere in the legal system.
So, all right. So with this happening, with these judges, and you're talking about how many judges you're talking about when you say this?
Oh my God, hundreds.
Retired
See, we have,
retired judges.
retired judges, yes. You see, we have our state is divided into 11 judicial regions. Each region encompasses about 20 counties, and the regional judge appoints retired judges in all of those county courts and district courts, where a judge has to recuse himself. Now, granted, they're not a lot. In the course of a month, you're probably going to have one or two, maybe three. In a county that has 30,000 people, you're going to have maybe three, maybe four cases a month or more, where a retired judge is going to preside over them.
Right.
And we have 254 counties in this state. So yeah, the numbers add up. And it's been going on for 20 years.
So, okay, what happens with those cases that these
They're void.
retired?
Whenever the defendants find out about it and have an attorney file an appeal to strike their conviction, it'll be stricken. Now, there's some consequences for the state on this. You see, anybody who was, convicted and sentenced by a fake judge was illegally, and unconstitutionally held in prison. And that defendant can sue the county and the state for false imprisonment for every year that he was imprisoned. Now, this doesn't matter if the guy is innocent or guilty. And the state can retry the guy and resentence him to prison legally, but they will still have to pay for those years that the person was incarcerated under that false judge's order.
And this is
And the judge has no immunity from suit either. He can be sued civilly by the defendants.
And it doesn't matter if you're presently incarcerated or not. If you have done your time.
Because you're illegally incarcerated. You have to have a judge sign the order. And if the person who signs the order is not a judge, it's as if the state kidnapped you.
Is there a statute of limitation on that?
Nope. An illegal act is an illegal act. It never becomes legal just because it takes a long time to figure it out.
And people don't know this.
No. The state's totally ignorant about it. Not much longer, though.
Okay, so how is it that you know and they don't know? Well,
one is I read, and I look at, I'm a consultant, so I look at everything. When I look at a case, I look at everything and everybody. I don't take anything for granted. And so I look at the judges, and I look at, and I look at their history.
Right.
And like I said, you can take nothing for granted. And here in Texas, when I started, looking a little now, when you have to go back even further, when I was dealing in the oil and gas industry and had a major suit against one of the seven, what were known as the Seven Sisters, they were the seven major oil companies back, up until the 80s, late 80s when they started breaking up. You had Chevron and Gulf and Exxon and Mobil and Shell and so you had these major oil companies. They ran everything.
Right.
And you get in a fight with one of those guys, they got more money than God, and they'll let you know that. And I noticed in my first two trials, the judge in the first case in Colorado, first day of trial, he was so impressed with a major oil company there with about 5 or 6 attorneys, and me there with my one attorney. And so that first morning session of the trial, it looked like I was toast in the eyes of this judge because he's playing up to the major oil company and all the money, power, and prestige. He had never had a case this big. And then they went to lunch to have this is a true story. They go to lunch and they're having a kind of a pretrial conference, so my attorney has to go along, and I go and have my own lunch. Now, this is downtown Denver, just over from the Capitol. The courts are just all right there. And so when we come back after lunch, I noticed that all of a sudden the judge lands in the face of the oil company and their attorneys, and man, it's downhill. And I look at my attorney and I go, what the hell happened at that lunch? He says, no, I got to tell you later. You're not going to believe it. And so after that that day ended,
Yes.
we went out and had a little meeting. He goes, "I'm going to tell you what happened." He says that pre-trial conference, it was as bad as the first morning hours. The judge, he wouldn't listen to our side about nothing. And then on our way back to court, and I'm thinking, man, Dave, this is going to be rough. He says we get to the corner and we get stopped right there in front of the Capitol. A motorcade is coming by. The motorcycle police officers stop and, block the intersection, and one black limousine after another goes through. And then the second one to the last, as it's making the corner, it slows down and it stops.
Uh-huh.
And the back window rolls down, and a guy leans out and he says, "Dick, what are you doing up here in Denver? Why aren't you back there in Texas, trying a case?" And he says, "I am, George. I'm trying one up here." And he says, "Oh, really? Well, that's great." He says, "Hey, why don't you and the lady come over? Barbara and I will be in Houston, over the weekend. Why don't you and your wife come over for dinner?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, will, George, will." And the motorcade moves on. The judge's jaw is on the ground. That was Vice President George Bush, Daddy Bush, under Reagan. And that's all that judge had to see. He goes, "Oh, well, no wonder you only need one attorney. You're tied up to the vice president, and so the oil company's in the trash can now." And that's the way it went. Now, not that my case was won on that. The right was on my side. I had the contract. They were breaching it.
Right.
But in the eyes of the judge in the morning, this is a big oil company. Why should I rule? I've never had such a big case. Why should I rule for you and your contract, and PO the major oil company? But then when he saw my attorney was close friends with the Bush family, he grew up right next door to them, then the tide changed. And that is indicative of the courts. When I got back into Texas and resued them again, had a similar encounter. My attorney was in Austin. We had a hearing in Houston. My attorney wasn't prepared. He's called in on the phone. We needed a deposition of another judge. And the sitting judge goes, "Well, if I order this deposition, what's this judge going to say?" My attorney on the phone says, "I don't know." did upset me somewhat. And so, I'm in the courtroom by myself. My attorney's on the phone in Austin. And I said, "Yeah, I can answer that question, since I'm the one who's talked to the judge." And I explained to the judge what this judge is going to say. So he says, "Oh, okay, I'm going to order the deposition." And as soon as he hangs up, the oil company's attorney jump. My attorney's off the line. It's just me there. And these oil company attorneys just jump the judge and go, "Your Honor, what are you doing?" And the judge says, "Oh," and he's walking around, straightening his pictures in the courtroom, and he says, "Look, I don't know why you're upset. The deposition's going to make no difference. You don't need to worry about it." And I'm going, "What the hell?" But this judge is like, it's not going to change my mind. Well, he didn't know what was going to come out in the deposition. And when the deposition was heard, the oil company decided it's time to settle. And so we settled. But the judge, the elected judge, he didn't care. He was going to ignore it. And he told the oil company right there in front of me, like, "There's nothing you can do about this." And generally he was right. I wasn't gonna take on the judge.
Right.
Because I knew what was going to happen when that oil company heard that deposition of the former judge. And when they heard it, that was it. So this is the politics of the judiciary.
That's
and
crazy,
so you
though.
have to be prepared.
And
so in Rodney's case, we have two motions that will start first. And they will determine whether we go to the elected judge over the court, or we stay with this visiting judge until he gets indicted for a murder or manslaughter charge for illegally signing that execution order on Larry Swearingen.
Right.
So that probably nothing will take place until after Christmas and probably the New Year's holidays. So it'll be early next year before anything happens on that. In the interim, 2020 is going to do a 2-hour special on Rodney Reed's case.
Okay.
That'll happen here in the next month. And that's going to have, I do not know yet which way that one's going to fall out.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear from the ex-attorney general who prosecuted Reed. And you're going to hear from, I think, the family side. And you're going to hear from some women who believe that Rodney had raped them in the past. That Rodney goes, I don't know who these people are. And the evidence, when I looked at the case, because when I was asked by the newspaper to look at this case, I knew nothing about it.
Yes.
I didn't live in the county, had never heard of the case. Well, I'll take that back. I do remember when I was in Houston, my sister, who lived in Bastrop, calling me and telling me, says, oh, I wish you were here in Bastrop. We have this really bizarre case going on of a black guy, and and she kind of explained a little bit, but
Right.
I could make head nor tails out of it, because it
Ramblings.
was complex.
Yes.
And it didn't occur to me until years later that that's what she was trying to alert me to that case. And so ultimately, I did look at it. And of course, I'm looking at it, not knowing guilt or innocence, and the reporter, when she gets all the files together from the family, from the newspaper, from, the prosecution's files for me to go through, the reporter wants to sit me down and explain the case first. When she gives me the files, I'll tell her, no, it's not the way I do things. I can read. I can make my way through this. I don't need you, suggesting to me
Right.
what I should find. And so I looked at the case. And what I saw real quickly is that Rodney was innocent of the charge of abducting and murdering this girl, Stacy Seitz. And then I had to look at these extraneous rape cases they had filed against him. And as I started peeling through those, time after time, right at the time of the rape, everybody knew who the rapist was, and it was not Rodney. And so it was only when the trial came up that the Texas Attorney General's office said, oh, all the DNA on these rapes that go back, to 1989, and Rodney didn't move to Bastrop County until 91, 92, that all of them are Rodney. But it's not possible.
So he was visiting and committing these rapes?
No, he wasn't even visiting.
But that could be the only argument that is presented.
That could be the only argument, but the other part was that on this one, the most egregious rape that you'll hear all the time, Dr. Phil, everybody talking about, is a 12-year-old girl in 89.
Right.
Violently raped.
Yes.
Problem is, she named her rapist. She was raped 2 times over 2 weeks. She names her rapist the first time, a guy she knows who lives in Bastrop, well known. They collect his DNA. They, do an investigation, have pulled it all together. And before they can, do anything with it, he rapes her again. Now, he's so brazen, he tells her best friend and next-door neighbor that he's going to do it again. And he did. And yet the state says, oh, we tested the DNA and it's Rodney's. Well, no, it's not. And no, you really didn't. Because one of the things that I looked at in this case is that the court appointed Rodney a DNA expert back in his trial in 98.
Right.
And she worked for a DNA lab in California. So as I look at her testimony and do some research about her previous testimony and her history, I see that there's a major contradiction in the way she presented herself at trial compared to what her reputation is. Her reputation is she's a bulldog. She doesn't put up with any BS. If you even suggest that you didn't give her everything, she will tear you and you in the court.
Right.
And yet that's exactly what the Attorney General's office did in court. And the question, it was kind of a statement question, and they were talking about breaking down the DNA numbers of 1 in 10,000, 1 in a million, 1 in a billion. And so the Attorney General tells the DNA expert, she says, would it surprise you if I told you that we obtained blood samples from Rodney's father and 3 brothers? And the defense DNA expert says, oh, yeah, it would. I didn't know that. Really? Well, guess what? About 2 months earlier in Houston, a DA did the same thing to her. And you know what she did? She damn near chewed the guy's ear off. She came up out of that witness stand and just berated him for withholding evidence, Brady violations. She threw the book at him. And yet her response on Rodney was, "Oh, I didn't know that."
Wow.
The Attorney General just admitted they withheld evidence from her. That makes a difference on how you break down the numbers as to whether somebody's guilty of something or not.
This is the defense.
This is the defense expert just rolling over like, like like a prostitute, because that's what she was. She's a paid prostitute. She was paid to throw Rodney under the bus.
Brian Benjet does what at this point?
Okay, Bryce. Benjet.
Sorry,
this is in the 98 trial. Bryce is the appellate attorney, the federal appellate attorney.
Okay.
But Bryce could have come back and raised these issues. Bryce has never raised an issue, in this case, in 18 years, where he didn't, just do it halfway and then let the state win, which he told me he was going to do back in 2002, 2003. Bryce told me that he and the Defender Service believed they could work with our Attorney General Abbott, who was the Attorney General at the time. He's now the governor.
Right.
The Defender Service believed that their client was guilty, and the state had a weak case, that Bryce and the Defender Service would then not fight hard and let the state win. And you look at Rodney's history, and it's just like, oh, Shazam. Bryce Benjet believes Rodney's guilty, and so he's going to let the state win and execute him, because that's what he's been doing. And that must have been the case with Larry Swearingen, because guess what? Bryce stood back and let him be executed.
Right.
Even though the judge was illegally on the bench. So Bryce is good to his word. At least in that regard.
Well, not to his client. Well, maybe we should specify the client.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I just have to shake my head. A week ago, just this last week, they featured a little 15-minute segment on the Dr. Oz show, Oprah Winfrey's Dr.
Yes.
Oz. They did a little 15-minute section, on Dr. Oz. They had Rodney's brother, Rodney Reed, and they had Bryce Benjet. And they talked a little bit, and then Dr. Oz and Bryce walk over to this little table where they've set up a little, I don't know what the correct word I want to use for it is, but they set up a little scene with little trees and little grass and little bushes, and they had a little rubber flexible doll.
Okay.
Girl doll. No clothes on. And one of those, like the old Gumby figure that you can bend the knees and do all this.
Right.
And they had taken a magic marker and they put some red on the side of her face, on the doll side of the face, and then on one of the arms, and then on the other arm. And they talked about it. It says, well, this is the way the body's laid out at the crime scene, on her back. But you see, those red marks are what they call lividity. That's where the blood pools after death. And then if you or stay in a particular position for about 6 or 7, 8 hours, the blood congeals, and if you move the body, the blood stays there. And in this case, the blood shows that she, would say that she's face down for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours before her body was placed at the crime scene. So, the killers didn't take that into account when they laid her on her back. And so now it's obvious that, this is not the correct crime scene, that she was someplace else face down for hours upon hours before she was moved to the final place they found her.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to throw out a little bomb here. This girl was never face down after death. She's always been on her back.
Huh?
That's right. And I'm not going to go into with you, Stu, Kevin, because I'm doing it with another major producer who's going to pull the forensics people in. Oh, no, this girl was never face down. You have to, there's evidence. See, you have these, like Bryce, who doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's listening to other people who are investigators, like one of the investigators from A&E TV that's running around telling everybody that, oh, she was drowned. Oh, the burn here is from the faucet and the hot water. Oh, no, none of it's true. Again, what they're doing is taking random pieces of evidence and trying to attach, a fact issue about how they died and why this person is burned here on the side of the face. You can't do that. The reason you can't normally, you would be able to do that with a simple case.
But this case is not that simple.
This one is not that way. You see, you're dealing with police officers and Texas Rangers setting up the crime scene. People that know a little bit about manipulating evidence.
Yes.
And that's why what would normally be a fact issue is not a fact issue in this case. You have to look at every detail, all of the evidence, and then create the scenario as a whole, leaving out no pieces of evidence. I could take this detective, this ex-New York detective, and walk him back through it, and he would go, oh, you're right. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, I didn't take that into account. Oh. But you have to. You just can't run out in a case like this. This case is simple and complicated at the same time. It depends on how you want to approach it.
Right.
It's simple because the time of death on this girl tells you where she died and when she died, and that means all the other evidence that is then used to implicate Rodney, like his DNA and sperm being on her body, all of it becomes consensual. See, just the time of death makes Rodney not a suspect, makes his encounter with her what he said it was, a consensual relationship they were having.
Which is what the forensics experts came in and said.
Right, and they were using my file. This is what I told Bryce from the day that that I met with him to take over this case, and that company that he worked for. It's what I put in the letter to the editor on the first day that they started their 4-month series. That Stacy had been dead almost 24 hours when they found her body. She died in Giddings at the hands of her cop boyfriend, and her dead body was transported to Bastrop to stage the crime scene.
The same cop boyfriend that got imprisoned for rape and abduction.
Yeah, abducting a woman and raping her at gunpoint, and with a gun, putting a gun to her head, raping her, and then telling her if she ever talked, he would come back and hunt her down and kill her when he got out of prison. I mean, this was a kidnapping and a rape. But they didn't charge him with the kidnapping. And there were like 4 or 5 other women he had been trying to do that to in the preceding year or two.
And for those who are not familiar, for those who are not familiar with the case, we're talking about Jimmy Fennell at this point.
Yeah, Jimmy Fennell.
Yes.
Yeah, they mispronounced his name as Fennell, but it's Jimmy
Fennell.
Fennell, Fennell.
Okay.
And yet he's a suspect in another abduction from that same town where he was a police officer of a young girl who was jogging one morning, and her body has never been found. But he's a prime suspect in that one too.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, no, Jimmy's not a good guy.
And
But
we spoke at length the last time, and you shed some light on that aspect of this case. So those of you tuning in, you want to ask a question or share a comment, feel free. 773-789-STEW gets you in touch. You can call, you can text, and of course, kevinstew.com. Jump into the stew pot. It's where we keep things bubbling. Everybody else calls it a chat room or a fancy. We call it the stew pot. It's our interactive portal. Come on in. David Fisher is joining with us, giving us some insight in the Rodney Reed case as it progresses. An update.
So if we let the anybody that wants to try to get in touch and work that out with you,
Yeah.
I said we would step over to another local case.
Yes.
In the last half hour.
Yeah.
The Trayvon Martin case, since that one has come back to life with Zimmerman suing the family. And the attorney.
I heard that news report and I was like, wait, hold up. Something, what? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, that's when you've got a nut who should have been in prison a long time ago, still free on the street to create havoc and mayhem. Well, it continues on. But let me explain something to people. I'm gonna just reach out and I'm gonna say something that all your listeners who sat through that are gonna go, Butt-inski, you're ignorant Insky, you're Duminsky. But here's what I'm going to say. Trayvon Martin, the George Zimmerman did not shoot and kill Trayvon Martin.
Here we go.
And I will stand by that. Now, that I'm not saying that Zimmerman's innocent and somebody else did it, and that's not what I said. Words mean things.
Right.
Zimmerman did not shoot and kill Trayvon. It is true that Zimmerman did shoot Trayvon, but the difference is Trayvon was already dead. Zimmerman suffocated Trayvon and then shot his dead body to conduct, his alibi of self-defense.
Okay,
so that's the difference.
What do you mean he suffocated him? Suffocated him how?
Here's how the scenario worked, and I have the police reports, the autopsies. In fact, the medical examiner. I had the medical examiner removed. He came from Texas. I'd been watching him for some time.
Oh my
here
goodness.
in Texas, and that's what caused me to look at Trayvon's case. But here's how this thing went down. Zimmerman sees Trayvon. Now, understanding Zimmerman's got a history. He has made calls on 6, 7 other calls to that local police department, of people who he thought were suspicious on the property. All were black males. All of them, 100%. So Zimmerman, that has the foundation of a racist. He sees Trayvon walking through the apartment complex. He starts stalking him. Trayvon's a 16-year-old kid.
Right.
He sees this guy in this truck following him, and he gets nervous. And the guy gets out of his truck and starts following Trayvon. So when Trayvon comes to the row of apartment buildings, the corridor that goes towards his dad's house where he's staying,
yes.
As soon as he turns the corner where Zimmerman can't see him, as a kid will do, he ran and hid. And then Zimmerman comes around the corner, and Trayvon, he doesn't know where Trayvon is, and he figures out real quickly, well, he couldn't have gone far. And Zimmerman's got a flashlight. So he goes shining around, and right there at that first apartment on the corner, or a row of low hedges, and that's where Trayvon's hiding, and he finds him.
Okay.
And he flushes Trayvon out. Zimmerman, with the flashlight in Trayvon's face, sees that Trayvon's a kid. And Zimmerman, the coward that he is, goes, oh, I can take him. He's just a 16-year-old kid. So they have a little encounter, and then Trayvon tries to run away from him. He chases him. He drops his flashlight right there in the bushes. Zimmerman does. And he traces Trayvon over to the sidewalk, where they have words again. And Trayvon, why argue with a nut?
But
So
he
he
doesn't
turns
know.
to walk away, and Zimmerman grabs him from behind, pinning his arms at his side.
Okay.
Now, Trayvon, how does Trayvon defend himself? His arms are pinned at his side by a guy that outweighs him by, probably 50, 60 pounds, maybe more. Trayvon puts his chin to his chest and then headbutts Zimmerman right square in the face. That's how Zimmerman got a broke nose. He got headbutted. Almost knocked him out. Zimmerman's knees go, collapse, and he goes down on his butt on the sidewalk, but he still manages to hang on to Trayvon.
Okay.
Now they're laying, Zimmerman's on his back. He's got Trayvon from behind, and Trayvon headbutts him again. But Zimmerman, he's a little smarter this time. He turns his face away to keep getting hit in the face again, and Trayvon bounces his head off the cement. Zimmerman's got a knot over his right ear and marks on above his left ear from the sidewalk. Well, Zimmerman turns his head to the other side, and Trayvon does it again. He's got a knot on his left side too, where Trayvon headbutted him again. And this time, Zimmerman rolls over on top of Trayvon, still having in the bear hug. And this is fatal, because Zimmerman is squeezing Trayvon. Now all his weight's on Trayvon's back, and he suffocates him. Just like you saw in that New York video of Eric Gardner when the cop jumps on his back.
Right.
And they have him down, and Eric's saying, I can't breathe. He's using the last bit of air in his lungs to exhale to say, I can't breathe. But with that weight on your back, you can't inhale. And then with the last breath that goes out, your lungs are collapsed, the weight's on your heart, the heart can't work properly, the strong side of your heart can pump blood into the brain through the base of the skull, but the right side can't pull it back, so every heartbeat, the blood pressure in your brain increases exponentially, and it crushes your brain against the skull, and you die of a quick brain death, probably 20 seconds.
Wow.
Now, they report that somebody's yelling, help me. Well, that's Zimmerman trying to call for help to somebody to come out and help him subdue Trayvon. He's got him down on the ground and holding him. He's not really paying attention that he's killing Trayvon. And by the time he realizes it, Trayvon's dead. So Zimmerman rolls him over on his back and puts that gun to his chest and pulls the trigger. But Trayvon's already dead.
So
this is why there's no DNA on Trayvon's hands, no injuries to his knuckles, no DNA of Zimmerman underneath his nails. The grass stains on Trayvon's jeans are on his thighs and the tips of his shoes. If he was kneeling over Zimmerman, punching him out, as Zimmerman said, the grass stains would be on his knees. But they're not. They're on his thighs because Zimmerman is laying on top of him, and he's wiggling, and his thighs are wiggling.
Rubbing on the
So the grass stains are on his thighs.
Right.
And they did not, and again, here we got, I have the DNA samples and tests. They did not test the back of Trayvon's head for blood and DNA. If they had, they'd have found Zimmerman's blood and DNA in Trayvon's hair from where he headbutted him in the face. But you see, these are forensics people with law enforcement that they come out and do their job, and none of them have the full story. And because you don't have the story, you don't know where to search for the evidence, and then the whole case goes to hell in a handbasket. Now, the mistake that Trayvon's parents, the Martins, made is they hired peacock attorneys. I'm going to warn anybody. If you get into a position where you have a loved one who dies in this manner, in the hands of police, you do not hire an attorney that doesn't come to your house with an investigator. If that law firm doesn't have on staff an investigator, you don't want to hire them. Because you got to have somebody who does the investigation separately from what law enforcement does in order to prod law enforcement to take the proper evidence samples.
Right.
So you don't lose these. Well, as you can see, that you never saw that law firm ever stand up in front of the press with an investigator and say, this is what our investigator found. That's when you know you made a mistake. Because all they're there for is the payday. They are putting nothing into an investigation. They're just waiting for the trial to be over and the state to want to settle. They come to the trough to feed, not to determine how your loved one died. And determining how your loved one died determines, how big an award you get. And you never see that. And that's when you know you made a mistake, when you hire an attorney that doesn't come to the party with an investigator.
And that's exactly what happened here.
Exactly what happened here. Nobody was paying attention. And you see, this should have been, and it still can be if the feds ever get off their duff, but this was a murder, pure and simple, because Zimmerman was the aggressor. Trayvon hid, and Zimmerman sought him out and then attacked him, and that attack led to his death.
Right.
And on a murder charge, just like in the Amber Geiger case in Dallas, Texas,
yes,
the actions of the officer were grossly negligent that any common sense person would know would lead to a death. Now, we'll talk about Amber Geiger at a later day, but even though the jury came to the right charge of murder, it was not an accidental murder.
Right.
This thing is a little more complicated than that, and again, I talked to the attorneys that represented Geiger and warned them that, they needed to take precautions with that medical examiner's office up there. Because
here we go again, another medical examiner's office.
Oh yeah, in Texas all of them are this way. That's why I've hit all of them. But this one's particularly egregious. But we'll be dealing with that at a later date. I have to get a copy of that autopsy report, and then I can talk more intelligently. I've reviewed the testimony of what the medical examiner said, and I'm going, are you kidding me? This is outrageous. And it's clear that Amber Geiger used the position of Bodum Jean's body after EMS got there to generate her story, to tell her story. Because, see, they moved his body from the location where he collapsed and died. They moved his body to a position that was closer to where Amber Geiger was, and thus she tried to make it look like it was self-defense. And how the defense and the state allowed this to be done, either side, tells you a little bit about Texas criminal justice. But back to Trayvon Martin.
Yes.
Trayvon Martin's whole case was summed up on that first day of trial when the defense cross-examined the detective who did the investigation. The defense attorney for Zimmerman asked the detective, Detective, isn't it true you found a shank in the bushes where Trayvon Martin was hiding? When did you ever hear in the build-up to the trial or after the trial that Trayvon hid from Zimmerman? If Trayvon hid from Zimmerman and Zimmerman found him, Zimmerman is the aggressor and there is no self-defense for Zimmerman.
Right.
And then the state on rebuttal came back and said, "Detective, isn't it true that the piece of metal that the defense said was a shank that was found in the bushes where Trayvon Martin was hiding?" So both sides knew Trayvon
Was
hid from
hiding.
Zimmerman. That's right, when he was found, and Zimmerman's flashlight was found at the bushes. That piece of metal was actually a piece of the awning when the homeowners of that corner condo unit screened in their back porch, and had been there for 10 years. But both sides knew Trayvon Martin hid from Zimmerman, and Zimmerman flushed him out. And I have the statement from the couple that lived in that apartment, and their windows were open, and they were home, and they heard the confrontation start outside their window in their bushes. So Trayvon didn't come back after Zimmerman was walking back to his truck. As he said, Trayvon didn't come running out of his hiding place and attacked Zimmerman. Zimmerman attacked Trayvon in the bushes where he was hiding. Ergo, this was a murder.
And
when Zimmerman grabbed Trayvon and rolled over on top of him in a bear hug, knew or should have known that action would be fatal to Trayvon. As fatal as if he put the gun to him and shot him while he was alive. That is the simplistic...
maybe he didn't know that part.
Let me tell you, you got somebody in a bear hug and you're squeezing them. Everybody's done that. The person will say, "I can't breathe."
Well, yes.
Especially if you're big.
Yes.
You can squeeze the air out of somebody.
Right.
Especially from behind. But you see, that's how simple the Trayvon Martin case is. It's all right there. Trayvon Martin has edema or swelling of the brain, which you can't have based on Zimmerman's story of how Trayvon died. Because when he shot him in the chest, the bullet went and punctured his heart, and so blood pressure would have gone to zero instantly, and without the heart beating, the brain can't swell. It takes extra fluids to swell,
right.
to cause the brain to swell, and that's from a head injury, and the heart's beating, and the blood's coming in, and fluids come out of the blood and start swelling the brain. But he's dead. Everything stops. Your body doesn't swell afterwards. Now, there also, again, had the defense had an investigator, they would have been there when the body was released from the morgue, and they would have asked the family, look at his face. Does it look swollen compared to the, last time you saw him? Especially his lips. Do his lips look like, somebody like they've been stung by a bee or having an allergic reaction? Because compression suffocation causes the lips to bloat out. Causes the face to puff up, because the blood that's coming into the base of the skull, the strong side of the heart that's pumping blood above the head, the shoulders.
Yes.
That blood goes into the face and the skin, so that the pressure gets so high that the blood breaks through the capillaries under the skin and stays there, so your face looks puffy and your lips can almost turn inside out. So, but nobody checked with the family. And if the family noticed it, not having seen a dead person before, they didn't know that this is evidence of something entirely different than what Zimmerman was saying. But again, you hire these peacock law firms that are what we call boilerplate operations. That is all they do is take calls for people who have a claim against government that's insured, or insurance, companies that are insured, your automobile, a grocery store, government agency. These organizations sue, firms that have insurance, and as all they sit is they wait for the insurance policy to pay out. They don't do any investigation. They don't care how your loved one dies. Well, I'm going to tell you, you ask any mother or father, which is more important to them, the dollar sign or knowing what happened and getting justice for their lost child?
Oh, yeah.
But you see, they're not given that option, and they believe that the attorneys are representing them. No, they're not. They're primarily representing themselves. And this is why the Martins have never learned what really happened that night, and yet it's all right there.
Have you gotten a chance to speak to the Martins?
No. I put in some calls when this thing happened to alert them.
Yes.
But that Crump law firm, and I talked to that, in several calls, but that Trump law firm, it's just like the Sandra Bland case with her law firm in Chicago.
Yes.
Same man, same thing. Those are boilerplate operations. They don't have anybody. They don't have any investigators to talk to. Nothing.
Did you look into the Sandra Bland case?
Oh, yes, I did. That's why they got the $1.9 million. If I didn't, they would have gotten nothing.
What did you find?
I waited after dealing with the Chicago firm. I then waited until since they didn't have a Texas law license, I waited until they hired a Texas firm. And then I dealt with the Texas firm. And they do have their own investigators. And then I provided them documents. I have both sides of the files, and I'm going to tell you, my files are more comprehensive and complete than the files the state gave the law firms representing the Bland estate. And I'm going to tell you this right now, and we can talk about this at another time if this is what your listeners want.
Oh, yeah.
Sandra Bland did not hang herself. Sandra Bland died in a hospital in Houston from an epileptic seizure.
In the hospital?
In the hospital. And they were treating her with a drug for her epilepsy. Do you know what that drug was?
No.
Marijuana. Sandra Bland was the first person in Texas to be treated with legal marijuana for the treatment of epilepsy while she was in jail and died. 2 weeks before Sandra Bland was arrested, the Texas legislature passed and the governor signed the medical use of marijuana for epilepsy in Texas. And this became a problem at the autopsy because Sandra Bland had these extremely high levels of THC in her system, and yet she'd been in jail for 3 days. But I made the district attorney admit to the attorney general, and I have the letter because I was part of it, so I have a copy of it,
right,
where the district attorney of Waller County tells the attorney general that they want to withhold the name of the drug they were using to treat Sandra Bland for her medical condition, which was epilepsy, because of the potential criminal and civil litigation. Well, I don't need to know the name of the drug. Crap, I've got the toxicology report from her autopsy. The only drug in her system was marijuana in very high levels.
Right.
And because I paid attention to the legislation, I know that they could legally treat her with marijuana. And then what do? When she dies, they turn it around and say, oh, she was smuggling pot into the jail and getting stoned. God almighty.
Oh, I didn't get that part of the story.
I'm sorry?
I didn't get that part of the story.
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's what the assistant district attorney, as soon as that toxicology came out, oh, yeah, he got front and center press conference saying this. And then the Texas Rangers, when they did their investigation, they questioned the other inmates in the cells around Sandra Bland, and all they wanted to know is, did you smell pot when you were here? And did you smell pot? It was so ridiculous.
That's crazy.
But Sandra Bland's not over. It's still brewing. I would put money on it that sometime this next year the FBI arrests the trooper, the sheriff, the 2 Texas Rangers, and the physician and the nurse at that jail. You see, here's what happened to Sandra Bland. That physician and nurse at that jail charge inmates for cell calls. They charge them $40. And if the inmate doesn't have any money on their commissary account at that jail, they will not come to the cell and provide medical treatment.
Are you serious?
I am dead serious. And the reason I know this is while this was all going on, another inmate, a black male, almost died in that jail. And he came out of there unresponsive. They were able to revive him. He spent like 3 weeks in intensive care at the big Houston hospital, Ben Taub, the big emergency room. And when he got out, I talked to him, and I said, why didn't you call the jail nurse and jail doctor? You know, your condition developed over, a couple of months. He said, I did, Dave. You don't understand. My family's poor. It took them a while to get enough money to open a commissary account, that the doctor could bill. So they were letting me die until we got enough money.
Wow.
And see, Sandra Bland had no money on her. No credit cards, no cash, no nothing. And that's why they ignored her. And see, I have the records to prove it.
This now let me because most of these cases are black the quote unquote
they're
criminal
people of color.
The quote unquote criminal in these cases are of color. Is that all the all the time that you see in Texas?
Are of color.
Yeah, in Texas, is that what you see all the time?
No. It depends on how law enforcement view you. You can be white and they consider you to be trash or, anti-police, and they'll treat you just like they would treat, any person of color. With utter disregard, you will be treated worse than any dog that they would ever treat.
So
by far, and utterly don't care, and the state will come in and cover up for them. And that's why it just goes on and on and on and on and on.
So
and I've looked at a lot of these.
If you don't have influence, if you don't have power, if you don't have a name associated with you, then you're nobody. Whether you're black or white.
You're a victim of the system. You have no rights, and even, in your death, the state is going to do a investigation that's going to lead to a report that said you got what you deserved, in essence.
Do you find have you seen this trend in any other state, or is it something that is unique to Texas?
You had it there in Florida
with Trayvon Martin
there's a lot
case.
of states. Some states. Florida is as bad as Texas. The structure is almost the same.
It seems that way.
I would never. Yeah, I would expect to see the same thing I see in Texas that you see in Florida. You see a state's attorney general, prosecutors. And if you do that to Trayvon Martin in front of the world like they did it, I mean, what does it tell you? Nobody in that state, no defense attorney, no investigator, no law enforcement agency in that state would stand up and go, whoa, what the hell's going on here? Didn't you hear what they just testified to?
Right.
And see, the first thing I did is I pulled the records. That's one thing I will say that's better about Florida than Texas. They will give you the records. You can get the autopsy report, the investigator statements, and everything. In Texas, they'll seal it from you for, until the person is executed, so you can't, get to the truth.
Unless you get to it early.
Well, yes, unless you catch them by surprise, right? And I've been known to do that on occasion or two. But in Florida,
wow.
It's easy. I was impressed. The Florida record system is light years ahead of Texas.
But it's easier to be corrupt if you have shabby record keeping.
Oh, absolutely. If you seal your records from the public, there's nothing you can't do because you can rewrite your reports because there are no records out there in the public. Nobody will know you've changed your report.
Mm.
So it looks like we're getting towards the end of your program.
Yeah.
So What we can do is go ahead.
I know you took some time out from research and putting documents together to come and chat with us, and I really appreciate the fact that you would do that,
No
because
problem, and we can do this again because
oh yeah,
we need to probably go a little deeper into Trayvon. This is probably going to cause some people to comment on your comment lines, and we can come back and go more into detail.
but we do, because
Spend an hour and a half on that program.
here it is, George Zimmerman is suing Trayvon's family, and
Right.
that's crazy.
But you see, they made some allegations that they can't back up by fact because the Crump law firm didn't hire an investigator to get to the facts.
And it is based on that why he's suing?
Just on that, yeah. If you say something, and you slander somebody, and it's slander because you don't have the facts.
Right.
If you say something that's true, you can't be sued for it. If you say something that you can't prove it's true, well, that's a little different.
Yeah.
And that he's exploiting that little hole. Now, that doesn't mean that the facts can't still come out. And see, that's where Zimmerman has made his fatal error, because by raising this issue, it opens a door for somebody like me to come in and say, yeah, well, no, the state didn't get to the facts. No, they didn't come out at court, but, oh, by the way, that evidence still exists.
Mm.
And guess what? It can come back into the topic, and it can kill your lawsuit.
So,
but just again, as a warning, if you get into the position where you have a wrongful death, do not hire, the most high-profile law firm. You make sure that the firm you hire to represent you has a full-time investigator, because that's the only way you're going to get to the truth. And that truth will change the award value. Had that law firm in the Sandra Bland case paid attention,
mm-hmm.
the Bland family would have probably gotten $20 million, not $2 million.
Right. But that's not over.
But
that's not over. Is it the Bland case all done with? It's not all done with.
No, it's not. There is still that opening. But do you know that, I've discussed this, even set up with attorneys for them to come back and sue the state for fraud? And my God, it was like walking into a beehive. And I tell the family, I said, look, we need to move on this. There's a statute of limitation. You have to take action fast. So, the family needs to pick out who's going to be the agent who signs the suit.
Yes.
Because they're going to put a gag order, so there can't be, if mom wants to go on these shows and talk about the case, can't be her, because they're going to gag order her while the civil trial's going on. So it needs to be one of the sisters, because mom says she's gonna continue to talk.
Right.
And so I reach out to the sisters and say, so y'all need to pick somebody to be the person who represents the family and signs the suit. And then that person will probably be under a gag order, and y'all have just a couple of weeks to make that decision. And my God, the email I get back, man, I've called racist and this. Who am I to tell them what to do and when to do it? I mean, I'm going, whoa. Shit, I'm trying to just tell you what the law is. And I mean, I got raked over the coals because I dared tell them what to do. I'm just telling them, you have just a few weeks in which to get this thing refiled. And I'm telling them what to do. So, no. Yeah, I won't deal with the Bland family ever again.
Wow.
I tried. Now, that does not mean that I won't be working to get the truth out about what happened to Sandra Bland. I just will be not working with the family.
Okay, I get you. I get you.
Right. Yeah, see, that's a very different. Sandra
Yeah.
Bland deserves the truth. She was a woman who found her calling in life, and that calling was to get justice for everybody. And in death, I can still help her get that legacy done.
Right.
But I'm not dealing with that family anymore. You know, I just have to say, yeah, burned twice, and that's too many times.
Yeah. One time, shame
and
on
what,
you.
I don't know. Huh?
One time, shame on you. Two times, shame on me.
Yeah, right. So, and it's just not worth the time. And their statute of being able to come back and sue the state for fraud has kind of failed, and so I don't need to I don't need to go there. That the family has their own internal issues,
Right.
and that's best handled amongst the family and not by an outsider.
Right.
So I found that out the hard way. So that's all said and done. But like I said, we can come back. We can go into great detail on Sandra Bland. We can go into greater detail on Trayvon Martin.
Oh, definitely.
And then as the things unfold in the Reed case, and there are several things that will be coming out within the next 30 days, and one of them again will be the 2-hour 2020 special.
Yeah. I must say this though. From our first conversation, someone had reached out to me from the Underwood family. Donna Underwood.
Yes, Don Underwood. I know that
Yes.
case, right.
And I asked about the racial possibility of it just being if it is just black people who are victims in this situation. And because of this, I will be talking to Donna eventually on here, and I'm glad you're aware of the Underwood case.
In Donna's case, she's white. Her son was white.
Yes.
He caught his fiancée stealing from his 401k. He told her to leave, to pack up and get out, and she picked up the shotgun and shoved it in his face and pulled the trigger.
Yep.
And the reason she got away with it is she was a drug informant for the local police detective of that town. So he would rather, cover up a murder and protect his police informant and his cases, and that's what they did.
that
and the same.
That's a short version, but there's a whole lot more to it.
Oh yeah. There's always a short version, and then there's through the weeds and through the dale and over the hills and the mountains we go. Yeah, there's a long way, but that's just the short of it. But same medical examiner's office that did the Amber Geiger, the voting machine autopsy. And same BS.
Nope.
Yep. So yeah, there's always a short version, and when I look at a case, I go for the short version to get to the point. Now, you can, if you wanted to go through and discuss every piece of evidence, everything that was tampered with, all the deep-seated reasons and the ins and outs, then yeah, you can spend your life doing that. But like with Rodney Reed, his guilt and innocence, hinges on time of death.
Right.
And it's just that simple. Now, all of the crap, and the illegality that the Attorney General's office and the state and the prosecutors, the stuff they did, that story has to be told. Because, this has got to be stopped so it can never happen again.
Right.
And so, yes, and of course, now that the media has recognized his case, and it's going to get, this 2020 special is either going to be good for Rodney or it's going to be bad for Rodney. Depending on, because that's a national media operation.
Right.
So the way they, if you want to say spin it or report it, is going to make Rodney look really bad or really good. And right now, I have no idea which way that's going.
Wow. Well,
But it won't be long. It'll be less than 30 days. We'll know.
yeah. Well, all being well, they continue along the lines on which you started. Um, A&E did a whole documentary on this. They used information from your findings to
That's
help out
correct. They
in
use
that.
my files, primarily my files. Yes.
Right. So I can't see why they'd want to.
Well, 2020 is doing this differently. They're not looking at the guilt, innocence of Rodney, how he came to be convicted, the victim, was she in, no. A&E TV, 2020 is focused only on the extraneous rapes that Rodney's accused of, the women he's accused of raping prior to this girl's death. Or,
Oh,
that's all they're doing.
but if that's all they're doing, then that's open and shut.
Actually,
He wasn't there.
no. Yes and no. The the thing that kept media away from looking at Rodney's case for so long was the allegations of all these other rape cases. Now, Rodney's, explanation is very simple. I don't know who these women are. I never met them. I couldn't have raped them. I've never met them. So you're asking me questions about them. I don't know anything about them because I've never met them. I don't know who they are. And it's like, how can I prove a negative when I don't know anything about the woman? I was not there. Wasn't participating in it. I've never met them. How do you defend yourself? And see, this is the skill of that assistant attorney general with creating lies. And she's good at it. But at the same time, she's also bad at it.
The inconsistencies.
So, yeah, I'm going to leave it kind of laying right there because I don't know who's listening and I'm not ready to talk about that yet. But if, the problem that the Attorney General has is the two key women, the two that are the most important and the most egregious, is the 12-year-old girl and the woman who was raped on the railroad tracks. And here's the problem. Both say that they didn't name Rodney. They didn't identify Rodney. They didn't know Rodney. It's just that the Attorney General's office told them that the DNA said it was Rodney.
Right.
See the difference?
Yeah.
And see, there's the problem.
Right.
Because then you have to rely on other witnesses. And in that comment section on the first, interview on November 25th,
yes,
you have a Bastrop, woman.
Yes.
Blog in.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew the rapist personally. Mm-hmm. She knew the girl who was raped. It was her next door neighbor and really best friend. Mm-hmm. Knew all about it and everything. Yep. And she's telling everybody. And since she was living there, the woman who was raped on the railroad track, the guy who raped her, who was not Rodney, was running around town bragging about it.
Right. And threatened her.
And no, he never threatened. No, he never threatened her.
That wasn't the one?
No.
Okay.
No, he never threatened her. He was proud of himself. And the woman who was raped, named him.
Yes.
I think she named him because before he raped her, they talked for a while. Mm-hmm. And he told her that he knew the woman's daughter. Well, here's the deal. Rodney Reed doesn't know the family and doesn't know the daughter. But the guy who raped her knows the daughter, and the daughter knows him. So when Mom got home, got to see her adult daughter, and asked her, what is the guy? Who is this guy? Here's da 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 da. He's the one that raped me. Oh, well, that sounds like Pat. But it was only, and that happened in '95, October of '95.
Yes.
It wasn't until '97, '98 that the state said, "Oh, we ran the DNA, and it comes back to Rodney Reed." But in that interim, the guy who was walking with Pat down the railroad tracks when they saw the drunk woman walking ahead and told Pat, "Come on, leave her alone. We're going over so-and-so's house." And he, made the turn on the street, that crossed the railroad track where they were going. But no, Pat kept going. The woman who lives on the corner of one of the cross streets that saw the woman going down the track and Pat following her. And then saw Pat come back after the train all disheveled and his pants all mussed up. And she commented about him being with that white woman. So there were two people who saw Pat go after this woman. So there was a lot of history, but the Bastrop, according to reports, the Bastrop detective told Pat, pulled him over one day and said, "We know you raped this woman, but we don't want you for it. We want Rodney."
They
So
told.
you ask, well,
What?
Then how did they tamper with the DNA? Because it's, if it's not Rodney's, it's not Rodney's. Well, that's easy. That's because the judge court appointed a DNA expert who worked for the state. And she got in at trial and said she tested the DNA from all these rapes and got the same thing the state did, when in fact they never shipped her anything. And I can prove that.
Well, yeah.
She never tested anything. She's a liar. And I can prove it. I have the records. I can prove it 100%.
Yeah, I've seen the alleged shipping document too.
Yeah, well, there's a lot more than I've released. There's a lot more. And it's not just this shipment they tampered with. There are other. They all through this case. And so, that's thoroughly documented, and that'll be coming out in a bigger piece.
Yes.
You see, but you've got to get the right media company for what they're going after. With A&E TV, they just wanted to prove that Rodney was innocent. I tell them, well, there's only one way to prove he's innocent, and that's time of death.
Right.
And that's what this file is for, because it all hinges when she died. If she died many hours before they said she did, then she died at the hands of her boyfriend, and a dead body was brought here, and that's what the evidence in the truck shows. So the DNA is like the pendulum of a clock that's put in motion by time of death. Time of death swings the pendulum to innocent,
For Rodney.
or guilty. In this case, the time of death shows that he is 100% innocent and the cop is guilty. And there's no way to get around it.
Yep.
Now, what I gave to A&E TV was strictly for time of death. Nothing more. But there's a lot more that covers all the bases, like, was she ever face down? See, I have that documentation too.
Right.
How did she get her burns? I got those documents too. Yeah. So that can all be put together, and it just adds to the evidence that the cop is guilty. The time of death tells you he's guilty, but then the tampering with her body could only have been done by the cop and his buddies.
But even his track record, speaks.
No, but he's a cop. You can, the state can. It's amazing what the state can forgive a police officer for doing, but nobody else.
Right. David, once again,
Good talking to you, Stu.
mind blown. We have more to catch up on.
Real good then, and we'll stay in touch. And as soon as there's another development, I'll give you a call, and we can we can see if we can work something in.
Definitely.
Alrighty.
Definitely. Thank you.
You have a good night.
Thank you again. We'll talk.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, David Fisher, Mr. Butt-inski himself, doing what only David can do. Nobody I have ever met, nobody is as thorough as this guy. And what can I say? Pay attention. Keep your ears to the ground. There's more to come. We're gonna take a quick little break, and we're gonna wrap up tonight with some musical therapy. I want to say thanks to our segment sponsors. The second segment was the first segment I already mentioned, Pulse Media Group. The second segment, thanks to Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands. Althea is a licensed massage therapist. Comes to you if you're in Broward County, North Miami-Dade, or South Palm Beach County. All you have to do is give her a call, 954-655-9000. And she'll come to you, make your appointment. And she's been a massage therapist for almost 20 years now, licensed in the state of Florida. I want to say thanks to Reggae Global Entertainment for sponsoring the previous segment. And Reggae Global will take care of your music industry and PR needs with 30 years of experience in the industry, artist management and booking, entertainment, event planning and production. You give them a call at 954-998-8034. And they recently, I'll play the track from a production that they were very much involved in, from a brand new group out of South Florida called Sensational Dynamic Sound. And I'll play a track from them in just a moment. And I want to say thanks to the sponsor of this segment, GMAC Music Solutions, providing light, stage, and sound production services, musical equipment, PA systems, audio engineers, DJs, bands, musicians, singers. All you have to do is just give them a call, 754-307-4622. Easy way to remember it, 754-307-GMAC. I'll be back in a minute, closing out this night shift show.
Pulse Media Group, innovative streaming and recording, has done it again. A new way to get your business in full view of your neighborhood consumer through AdShare TV. It's available in your neighborhood today. It's easy. Just call us, 754-999-6020. Become a host today and place a TV monitor in a strategic location so it's easy to see. Get a 1-minute video ad or longer that plays anywhere in our network. Can't be a host? No problem. For a few dollars, we'll run your 30-second video ad. A host can run announcement specials like buy one get one free or discount ads. Let's turn your flyers into a 30-second video with music or a voiceover, or let us create and run your video ad with a spokesperson. Take advantage of our early enrollment discount. Join us today. Your ad will be seen at least 30 times per day in your AdShare TV neighborhood. It's easy. Just call us, 754-999-6020. AdShare TV, part of Pulse Media Group.
feeling. It's been a long time running, and I know you wanna stay. So I think that it is time we live like we used to. Ride all around the city singing with the top down. Let's take it back to when we were younger. It's been a long time coming, so put on a happy face. Grab my hand so we can let all of our troubles out. There's no cares tonight. Take me for a ride. Even when the stars never will align. Even when it's dark and you lose your mind. Whoa, whoa. Right in the moment when your head is confused. Oh, I will stay in the madness.
This track is called Madness, from the lady that gave you If I Loved You, out of California. This is Royce.
It is confused, oh, I will stay in the madness with you. Baby, don't you worry, 'cause you know I understand what it's like to be chewed up and spit out in the cold world. Baby, there's no hurry, as long as you take my hand. We can dance and I won't be the one to let you go. There's no care tonight. Take me for a ride. Even when the stars never will align. Even when it's dark and you lose your mind. Whoa, whoa. Right in the moment when your head is confused. Oh, I will stay in the madness with you.
We're gonna hear more from Royce. I really like her. I like her music. I like her style. I like the messages in her songs. And as we gonna close out this musical therapy, it's not much of a musical therapy tonight, and I know much is needed in a night like this. With the information that we've gotten a wealth of information tonight. And I encourage you to go and look at the previous show I did with David. You can look it up in the archives. Go ahead and look at the comments. Read through the comments following that show, or the comments relating to that show, as you pull it up in the archives. And you'll see some of the things that we were talking about. Thanks to each and every one of you, those who shared online, those who were in awe in the stew pot, didn't have words to say. Thanks to you nonetheless for being here. It really means a lot. And as I said before, I have some more new music for you. That was Royce, track called Madness. This one coming out of South Florida, brand new female group by the name of Sensational Dynamic Sound. Features 3 talented ladies. Shauna Dazzle, no stranger, you've heard her music here. Suzanne Sultry, no stranger, you've heard her music here. And Dottie, her music we haven't heard yet. This is Sensational Dynamic Sound. Track is called Woman in Love. where I bid you all adieu. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you all. From here in South Florida, good night. Catch you tomorrow. Back with healthy love. Y'all take care until then, yeah?
When being in the moment is priceless, consider the ability to share that moment. If you can video it, you can broadcast it. And Pulse E-Media Group has the tools you need. Weddings, birthdays, funerals, graduations, church services, parties, seminars, you name it. Pulse E-Media Group can provide you with a secure medium controlled by you to broadcast your event. Contact us at www.pulsemediagroup.com for more information. Pulse E-Media Group, when being in the moment is priceless.